Bob, I want to tell you a little bit about him. He's our next speaker. He's been an active in business, political, and military affairs for 40 years. He's been the president of 3 international franchise companies and has owned 11 independent franchises. As a special representative appointed by the Secretary of Defense, he has traveled and trained with the Special Forces of the United States military as well as those of several foreign governments. Bob hosted a national TV show for 3 years and appeared on numerous movies and television productions. He also was a guest on Oprah. Bob and I have Life Wellness Ministries, and this international ministry is dedicated to bringing hope, health, and opportunity to those seeking a more abundant life. Today, Bob is going to speak on how to pass it on. I'd like to turn this over to my best friend, my partner, my soulmate, Bob Phillips.
My purpose here today is to lift you up, to encourage you, to give you positive input, to help you become goal-directed, God-guided, and mission-motivated. There is a time when we need to take action, and that time is today. As Karen said, I used to have a television show called Pass It On. It went to 140 major markets, 70 million viewers. It became the #1 show. I opened up the news, weather, and sports 5 times a day with a little 2-minute positive thought for the day. And there were stories of hope and inspiration, and the first stories were stories that I would write every day. And then after a period of time, people would begin to send stories in to me. And those stories seemed to fall into life lessons, if you will. Life lessons that are very applicable to where we are and who we are and what we're trying to do today. So I'd like to share with you 2 of those life lessons. Life lessons that if we apply will help us accomplish all those things that we want to in Mannatech. And that first life lesson is, and I want you to write this down, is just to look up. Just to look up. We heard a preacher here a couple of days ago, and he said sometimes we spend too much time with photographs in our mind. We see ourselves as we are. We take a photograph as we are. We see the trials and the tribulations, the fact that we don't have enough people to talk to, the fact that the business is not moving ahead as fast as we'd like for it to. And those are the pictures that we hold in our mind. And he said you need to take those pictures out of your mind and put the prophetic into your mind. The prophetic. I will tell you that generations before this company was birthed, it was prophesied that Mannatech would be a company of destiny. And if you've read the Castor's book, you realize that it is not by happenstance or by accident that we are where we are today. That this is a Joseph company. And there has been prophetic anointings and speakings over the people of Mannatech. And I'm standing, David White, just stand up very quickly. David White is a prophet. Within the last 30 days, he has prophesied to Sam Castor and his family and some of the people in Mannatech. And I got to tell you, there are great things in store. And don't leave this place until you shake David White's hand. Give him a round of applause. David White. Write this down. Mannatech's not a matter of life and death. It's more important than that. Karen said I was on the Oprah show, and when you're on the Oprah show, they pick you up in a limousine, take you to the airport, you fly first class to Chicago, they pick you up in a limousine, put you up in the suites, and this particular show that I was on, they said that you have a 6:30 call, which means I had to be downstairs to get in the limousine at 6:30 to go to the studios. And you had to be there an hour early, and they gave you an hour. I had my own hair person and my own makeup person, and after 1 hour in makeup and hair, I got to tell you, I never looked so good. I mean, it was just amazing. And then they take you to the green room, And there in the green room, you meet the executive producers and you meet the other people that are on the show. And this particular show happened to be about miracles. I had experienced a miracle, which I won't tell you about today, but there were some other miracles there that I want to tell you about. And I was there getting a cup of coffee, and this lady looked to be about 45, 50 years old, looked like she'd had a pretty hard life. And I said, well, gosh, what's your miracle? She said, well, for the last 11 years, I've worked in a filling station, pumping gas. And I've always worked nights for 11 years. I've never missed a night working for 11 years. And it was one of those filling stations where, the cashier would sit in the middle with all the glass booth around them, and the people would go get the gas and, pay her. And that's what she had done for 11 years. And she said, one day my boss called and said, I'd like for you to work the day shift. And she said, I don't want to work the day shift. She says, I can't sleep at night. That's the reason I work the night shift. I've never missed a night shift. I don't want to work the day shift. And the boss was pretty persistent, and she finally decided to work the first day shift in 11 years. She said about 10:30 or 11 o'clock, she was running through some credit card receipts, and she just stopped. She went back 2 receipts, and she pulled one out. She said that she'd lost her breath. She thought she was going to faint. She didn't know what was happening. She said all of a sudden she just jumped up and rushed out of the booth, which was strictly against the regulations. I mean, you never left the booth, bulletproof glass, had her own restroom. She ran up to a young guy putting gas in his car. She grabbed him by the shoulder, spun him around and said, what are you doing here? This young guy had kind of a quiet, just solid personality, and he said, well, ma'am, gosh, I'm just getting some gas. I'm in the Marine Corps. I'm getting ready to take my second tour of duty, and I've never been to this part of the country before, and I just rented a car, and I thought I'd just kind of go down the main highway and kind of see what's going on. And gosh, I'm a navigator in the Marine Corps, and somehow I got lost, and I got off on this little country road, and I ended up in this town. I didn't really need any gas. Thought I'd just kind of top off. And why do you ask? She said, 18 years ago, something happened to me that's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. For the last 18 years, I've tried to make right that which I'd done wrong. She said, there's not been a day that I haven't thought about how do I correct this wrong. I've spent all my money. It has gnawed at me for 18 years. Because 18 years ago, I gave my son away. I hired private investigators. We did all the freedom of information, and it was just a dead end. And I thought I'd lost him forever till today. And I think, I hope, I know that you're him. And they began to talk. They held hands, and they hugged each other, and they cried. Mother and a son reunited after 18 years. What are the odds of that happening? What are the odds? But the odds were in their favor because God ordained that they needed to look up. She had prayed for 18 years, and every speaker that you've heard, almost everyone said that they've made God a part of their business. So I say to you, the one thing you've got to do to accomplish what you want to in Mannatech is to look up. Second thing you have to do, write this down, is show up. It's just that simple. Just show up. Sir Edmund Hillary, when he was trying to conquer Mount Everest, on 2 occasions the mountain beat him. On the second occasion, he was at the foot of the mountain with his shepherd bearers, and he raised his fist and he said to the mountain, you are as big as you're going to be. You will never grow, but I will go and I will grow and I will come back and I will conquer you. And he showed up 2 years later and he conquered Mount Everest. There are problems associated with this business. This is not an easy business, but this is the highest paying hard work you'll ever do. And there's 4 thresholds I want to challenge you to cross. There's 4 thresholds as you look up and you show up. The first threshold is generate $100,000 of volume in 1 year. That's a pretty good threshold. The second threshold is earn $100,000 in 1 year. That's a pretty good threshold. The third threshold is save $100,000 in 1 year. And the fourth threshold, give away $100,000 in 1 year. That's a pretty good business and a pretty good personal program. Show up. About, I guess, 6 weeks ago, my son, whose name is Trey, gave me a call and he said, "Dad, we're rushing Caleb," which is my grandson, and his son to the hospital. Caleb is 18 months old. He is the joy of our life. He said, "Dad, they found a hernia on the wall of his stomach and we got to rush him to the hospital." Now, my son Trey is 6'1", 240, solid muscle. He's a part of the Fort Worth Police Department Special Gang Unit and SWAT team. I mean, he's a pretty macho guy. And I said to him, "Where are you taking him?" They're taking him to Cook's Children's Hospital. And I said, "Do not, under any circumstances, let them take him up to surgery till I get there." He said, "Dad, they're moving pretty fast. I'll do the best I can." So I drove like heck to get to the hospital. I parked in the wrong zone. I rushed up, went to the desk that I was told to go to, and there was a nurse behind the desk who said to me, "I'm sorry, they've already left, and you cannot go into the pre-surgery room." And I just thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And just then I heard a commotion behind me, and I want you to get the picture. I look behind me, and there are 6 of the biggest, toughest, roughest looking policemen I have ever seen in my life, because a call had gone out that one of their members needed help. And they were all dressed in their black military uniforms, and they all had bulletproof vests on, and they all carried not 1 but 2 guns and extra sets of handcuffs and mace and billy clubs. And it was kind of funny, all these great big huge policemen, they all carried little bitty tiny teddy bears. You know, that's all they could find for Caleb. And the nurse, sensing she was about to lose control, said to all of us, "You cannot go into that room. You need to go wait in the waiting room. You cannot go into that." But they did. They put me in front and we just rushed into the room. Now I want you to get the picture. Here's my son Trey, his wife Heather, and Caleb, 18 months, and he sees all the policemen and his eyes light up. And the doctor was there. And I got to tell you, the doctor has never seen so many guns in his life. So when I said to him, "Doc, are you sure that everything's going to work out okay for this surgery?" he said, "Yes." So we all held Caleb, we kissed him, we said our prayers, and something happened that has touched me deeply. The first big tough guy walks up to my son Trey, kind of leans over, puts his hand behind Trey's neck and whispers into his ear, "I got you covered. I got your back." And one by one, those big policemen, all 6 of them, said to Trey, "I got you covered. I got your back." And as I saw that, I was just moved, and I thought, that's the way Mannatech is. These presidentials up here, all the people you've heard, they got you covered. They got your back. There's a comedian in every group, and one of the policemen, as he was walking out the door, said to Caleb, "We're going to go out and catch a bad guy for you." And then they were gone. So the 2 points I want to leave you with are look up and show up. 28 years ago, the Make-A-Wish Foundation was started in Phoenix, Arizona by a mother who had a son with terminal leukemia. One day she called the fire chief of Phoenix, Arizona, and just said, "I just want to tell you that my son has terminal leukemia, and the doctors say he has about 24 hours to live. And for the last 4 or 5 weeks, he's talked about his only regret was he wished he could have been a fireman. And I don't know why I'm telling you that. I just wanted to call and let you know that." And this fire chief in Phoenix probably had a heart as big as all the desert. He said to the mother, "You tell that boy to hold on. We're coming." And 2 days later, the fire chief and 2 lieutenants delivered to the young boy a miniature helmet, a raincoat, fireman's boots, and a proclamation that said, in fact, he was a Phoenix fireman. Now, maybe the doctors were a little pessimistic in their, thinking that he would only last a day or two. But for 11 months, that little boy every day put on his outfit, and he had his, he'd talk about being a fireman, and he was with his family for another 11 months. But at the end of 11-month period, the mother called the fire chief again and said, "Hey, I just wanted to kind of bring you up to date. My son lived an extra 11 months. I think it's because of you. And he's going in and out of a coma. He won't last an hour. And I just wanted you to know that." And the fire chief said to the mother, and this is a true story, "You tell that little boy to hold on. We're coming." And he said, "I want you to step to the nurses' station and tell them not to be concerned about the flashing lights and the sirens because we're coming in force." He said, "We'll be there in 3 minutes." 3 minutes later, a hook and ladder truck rolls up to the hospital, goes up to the 3rd floor. 6 firemen along with the chief pour into the room. They circle the bed. They talk to the little boy. They tell him goodbye. And they wish him Godspeed. 3 days later, they have a fireman's funeral. Little coffin on top of a fire truck. Driving down the street, 2 pumper trucks shooting a stream of water over the truck. A lone bagpiper on a hill playing Amazing Grace. At the end of the service, they rang the bell that they had brought from the firehouse. They rang it 3 times. That's the Phoenix Fire Department signal for return to base. As I think about each one of you blessed people, I think that each one of us, as we were growing up, had dreams. We wanted to be a fireman or a policeman or an astronaut or a teacher. Sometimes things happen to us. Life gets in the way. Those dreams are pushed aside. But I would tell you, if you've heard anything here today that strikes in your heart that you want to do more with Mannatech, I draw the analogy, don't let the little fireman in you die, because it's never too late to be what you might have been. Thank you, and God bless you.